Good afternoon and welcome back. Just as a reminder, I am Kim Bittner and we are pleased to announce the next session. This is the Road Home. This is a patient-led panel discussion on the challenges and benefits of home therapy. So let's quickly take a look at the agenda for this discussion. Today's speakers include Dawn Edwards, who is also our panel moderator, Renita Peck, Tom Nord, and Joanne Jess, and we will introduce them shortly. After our panel discussion, there will be time for questions and answers. So go ahead and please submit any questions during the presentation, during the discussion, using the chat and the Q&A panels of your WebEx. So don't feel that you have to wait until the end of the presentation to submit your questions. You can do it during the presentation. So let's go ahead and learn a little bit about our presenters, but not too much because they are going to share about themselves during our discussion. So let's start with Dawn Edwards. Dawn is the CEO of the New York State CKD Champions, which is the advocacy and education group she is instrumental in founding. Dawn was diagnosed with kidney disease in 1992 and is currently using nocturnal home hemodialysis. She's also done in-center hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and short daily home hemodialysis. Dawn's biggest accomplishment was reinventing herself after mastering home hemodialysis, starting the New York State CKD Champions, and re-entering the workforce as a home dialysis advocate. We can have the next slide. I'd now like to introduce Renita Peck. Renita is currently on peritoneal dialysis, and she was diagnosed with glomerulonephritis in 1999. She started in-center hemodialysis in 2016, but eventually started treating at home. She works full-time as a recruiter for hospitals in Indianapolis and enjoys shopping, spending time with friends, and community service with her sorority. Renita is married and enjoys spoiling her nieces. I'd like to introduce you to Tom. Tom Nord went into kidney failure after receiving a liver transplant in 2014. He used in-center hemodialysis for 3 years and then began home hemodialysis. Tom says that home hemodialysis has allowed him to continue doing the things he enjoys, such as fishing, touring the country by car, and remaining strong in his Christian faith. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce you to Joanne Jess. And Joanne was diagnosed with kidney disease in 2005. She started dialysis in 2011. Joanne has used in-center hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis using both the cycler and the manual method. Some of the things that Joanne that give her great pleasure in life include gardening with her husband, traveling, and she has recently become an avid rock collector. So at this time, I would like to turn the panel discussion over to Dawn.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you. And we're looking forward to a really robust discussion about the road home. We know that everyone's not a candidate for home dialysis, but we certainly do hope that through this panel discussion that we're able to clear up some of the myths and misconceptions that you may have about home therapies, and that you may be able to consider another type of therapy to find out what's right for you. You know, sometimes we aren't happy with the one that we have, the treatment option that we are kind of stuck in. And it's always good to open up your mind and learn about the other therapies so that you can pick the best option for you. So that's what we hope to achieve today. And I'm really excited to be here with this great panel. And we're going to jump right into our questions so that we can get going. And we welcome all questions. Please ask us anything that you would like. We definitely want to address any of your questions and concerns. So I want to start with asking all of our panelists, starting with Renita. What was your diagnosis, and can you briefly describe the treatment that you have received?
Um, Good afternoon, Dawn, first of all, and other panelists and attendees. Um, I was diagnosed with glomerulonephritis, and I wasn't diabetic. Didn't have high blood pressure at the time. They're not really sure why I have the disease that I do, but I was diagnosed in '99, and I was able to have pretty stable kidney functions until probably about 2014, 15, and I started in-center dialysis. Did in-center dialysis, but I always knew that I wanted to do home dialysis because I was the nephrologist had a class to learn about the different modalities, and I actually went to the class and said, hey, yeah, home is for me, but based on our living situation at the time, our house wasn't conducive to doing home dialysis. So I did in center. When we moved, I was able to move to the peritoneal dialysis.
Well, that's really great that you had some time before you had to start dialysis to prepare yourself. Don't really get that opportunity to learn too much about our treatment options or our choices before we have to start. So that's really good that you were able to educate yourself and find out that there were other options for you before you chose your current treatment option. So
Right.
thank you
Well,
very much.
yeah, and just a side note to that as well. My father had kidney failure, and he went on dialysis. He was on dialysis, so I was already familiar with the process, and so I knew what was coming. I
Right.
went in eyes wide open. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's really great. Um, okay, so what about you, Joanne? Uh, what was your diagnosis, and can you briefly describe the treatment that you received? I think you're on mute, dear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was first diagnosed at 50, 60 years of I have genital kidney failure, but I slipped through the system of my life. I had classic symptoms, blood pressure, congestive heart failure that had activated a few years before the kidneys failed in 2005. I was blessed to have 6 years of controlling it with diet before I had to start dialysis in 2011. I started with the hemo, and I had a lot of troubles, a lot of clotting. My fistula wasn't in the right place, and it just was not a usable fistula. And I was not doing well at all. And a nurse came in and asked if I'd heard of peritoneal, and explained it to me. And I'm like, oh, sign me up. I truly believe I wouldn't be here if I had stayed on the hemodialysis. It just didn't suit my body. But as we all know, just keep trying something because you will find the one that suits your body. And for me, it's peritoneal. And I've been on it 11 years or 10 years now, excuse me, and doing great.
Absolutely. That is such a great answer. Thank you so much for that. And Tom, what about you? Your diagnosis and the treatment that you've received. You're on mute, Tom.
Is that okay?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay. Well, I was 56 years old and I was diagnosed with alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. And over that 2 years following that, I took tons of diuretics to hold down the ascites, which was the fluid that was building up in my system because of my liver failure. And at the same time, it just took my kidneys too. So in 2014, I did have a liver transplant, and at that time it was assessed that my kidneys were failed, and I started, during recovery from my liver transplant, I started dialysis in the hospital and went into center right after that. So here's a whole new world for us. And immediately, because we knew nothing about dialysis really, we were just all of a sudden, boom, your kids just failed and you have to do this treatment. So what we did was study. We looked into it, into the whole process and started learning, about everything about the whole process of hemodialysis. I had at the time a neck catheter, and shortly thereafter, that was taken out, and I had a fistula created at Stanford University, and he did quite well. It was it's in my left forearm right here, so it's pretty easy. At that time, I was in center, and things were going okay. I was doing good. My labs were good, and I was I was doing everything that everybody suggested. I kept up on an exercise program, and we went to the kidney walk. The American Kidney Foundation has a kidney walk every year all over the United States that brought all us kidney patients together to raise money and awareness of our disease. And it was there that I found out about home hemodialysis. And I started asking questions about it, and I met some folks, and I was invited to a symposium where I went to and I learned about the Next Stage System 1. And my wife and I had talked about it, about maybe, trying out this modality, but, we were scared because of the cannulation. You have to stick yourself with the needle. Well, that's not real incentive for anybody to do that, But
Sure.
But I met there was a woman who came in, and she was in her late 50s, and she was right-handed, and her access was on her right hand, her right arm, and she learned to cannulate herself with her non-dominant hand. And I looked at this woman and I said, "Oh my gosh, wow, that was pretty impressive to me." And I told my wife right then, I said, "Honey, heck, if she can do this stuff with her non-dominant hand, I certainly should be able to do it with my dominant hand." And so we talked to the nephrologist and signed up for the training and did get into the program and went and did the training. And it turned out that I had an excellent training nurse, and it just went well. I just hooked up to it and I could understand how it worked, how the next stage system works. It's just like a regular hydraulic system, like in your car, your brakes. If your brakes aren't working, well, you probably lost pressure, which means air in a line. Well, thinking about that, and I go, well, that's pretty easy. You can just bleed out the air, and it's fixed. So, I know the nuts and bolts behind it. Being with pumps and electronics and that type of thing to make the whole system work. And I said, we could do this. So I did. And since then, I've been on home hemo. I'm solo. I did solo training. So I do cannulate myself. And I'm coming up on, after 3.5 years, I'm coming up on almost 700 solo treatments.
Wow.
Through that time, there has been, it's a job. It's a procedure is what it is. I mean, if you go to have your lab drawn at the hospital, you go see the phlebotomist, she takes your blood, and it's a procedure, and she does it the same way she does everybody, you know, over and over and over and over and over again, right? So I said, oh, I could do that. And once I started it and learned the procedure, it's the same every time. I mean, it's like making pancakes. Your mom teaches you how to do it when you're a kid, right? And you make pancakes your whole life. And I'm pretty sure when you're an adult, you don't even have to think about it. You know, you need flour, eggs, butter, blah, blah, blah. It's just a thing. You put it together and you do it. And your pancakes come out good every time, unless you forget about them and burn them. You know, and dialysis is the same way. Home hemo is, it's a procedure. You don't want to forget everything, so you want to keep up on doing everything, your aseptics. But pretty much, it's like starting a new job. You go to the job and you don't really know about it. You don't know any of the people. You're not comfortable until you learn it. And then you start getting it. And then pretty soon the months go by, years go by, and you're really comfortable in your job. You know everybody, you're happy there, you love what you're doing, hopefully. And then, you just, you do it the same way every single time. It's a procedure, but the benefits are incredible. Now, home hemodialysis is the gold standard. It's the best you can do for cleaning your blood and for getting yourself normal into a normal pattern of life, because you can do your treatments at any time. There's nocturnal, where you could do it. You're doing it as you sleep. If you have a job, you could do it after work or before work. You work those details out with your employer, and then you could actually live a good, decent, it's hard to say normal life, because there's nothing normal about dialysis and kidney disease.
Right.
It affects everybody in a different way. There's underlying problems. People have diabetes, there's vascular problems, cardiovascular problems. So all these different symptoms and whatever your diagnosis is treatable in a better way when you have the energy to be able to function more normally. Let's put it that way. And energy is the bottom line, because you get more treatments. Basically, dialysis is 3 days a week, 4-hour treatments, so you're getting 12 hours of dialysis every week when you're going in center. It works incredibly fast. The fluids you put on, they take them off as fast as you put them on. I mean, you could chug a glass of water, and I mean, it's tough on your vascular system and your cardiovascular system when they pump the blood through your body and in and out to clean it so fast.
Right.
When you get on home dialysis, it's a much slower process. It just slows everything down. It might take a little longer, yes, but so you have an extra day. And that extra day and those extra treatments and the time you put in, the more dialysis you're getting, the cleaner your blood is of the toxins that cause us to be fatigued, to have poor appetites, and then your laboratory values go out of range. We're always fighting our phosphorus or potassium, and trying to keep our hemoglobin up, and those are all issues within the modality. Of course, everybody has those, but it just gives us a better grip on our health, and it keeps us up to date, and it gives us the energy and the hope to be able to someday even get a transplant. Now, home hemodialysis is probably the best prerequisite for a transplant. I mean, when the transplant unit looks at you and they start your evaluation, well, the first thing that you know, if you're on home hemo and you have great lab values, well, that makes you a better candidate, you know, and that's what you want to be. You want, and that with the extra energy I have, well, I do an exercise program, you know, the treadmill, and I'm on a regular exercise program that I'm able to do because I have the energy. Now, if my hemoglobin falls, and this is going to happen because, you know, we all do the lab dance. It's a dance we all do to keep our labs in the middle of the road. And when we start going off, you know, your potassium gets higher, your phosphorus, then we have to bring it back in to get it in the middle of the road. And we do that with diet and exercise. And
Yeah.
Hey, Dawn?
Yes.
Dawn, hi, Dawn. I was wondering, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just wondering if Tom brought up some good points, and I was wondering if we could talk about maybe the physical difference of doing home dialysis as opposed to doing in-center.
Absolutely. I thought he brought up some fantastic points as well. Tom, would you like to just give us a little brief, you know, synopsis of the physical difference in doing in-center dialysis from doing home hemodialysis? What did you find were the differences?
well, it's much more comfortable at home. There's no distractions. It's way safer as opposed to getting a BSI, a bloodstream infection, or any other type of infection. You're not in a room with lots of other people. Like for me, I have and most of us that are at home, we have a little space in our homes, and it's clean. It's
Sure.
it's safe, and it's safer all the way around.
Yeah.
That's one of the other reasons too. Is it's safe. You know,
Yeah.
for bloodstream, for getting some sepsis or any other you know, difficulties that you might get in center. Suppose, you know, and being on dialysis, if you have like a common cold, you still go to your treatments.
Right.
So you're in a room with 24 other people on a bigger clinic. You know, most of the clinics I've been at have at least 20 chairs. And, you know, you have all these people in there, and some are coughing, you know, and I mean, now it's different. I mean, the whole scenario around a clinic is different, but it's just so much safer. You know, I mean, I'm not around anybody or any chance of getting exposed to the virus because, well, you know, I'm, what do you call it? Sheltered in place, which I don't mind. And of course, you know, you also miss people socially and social groups, but you know, virtually, you know, there's all kinds of support groups virtually online, like this one right here that we're having, and it's just I would say that's the bottom line for home hemodialysis is it prepares you better for transplant, and it's safer at home.
For that, Tom. And
Mhm.
Joanne, what about you? What are the differences that you feel being on peritoneal dialysis as opposed to how you felt when you were going to in-center dialysis?
I think the biggest difference, I'm excited that you are having such good luck. I did not have that good of luck with it. It just didn't suit my body. It dehydrated me too much, and I had a clotting problem. I also had the neck catheter, which is not safe, as Tom said.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest difference for me with being at home is my energy level. With the home peritoneal, you get out of the chair and it's just like you've had a little break. I've got it down pat now that it's about 15, 4 times a day. I do the manual,
Right.
and I'm as full of energy when I get up as I was when I sat down and when I was in clinic, that was not the case. So I would say safety and energy level. I like the idea also that I am freer to schedule or control my time. I'm blessed that I can do well with a short dwell or a long dwell. And so I can adjust my day to just about anything. I can go 2-2-2. I can go 8-4-4. I can, just play with it. And I'm free to do just about anything I want to do.
Now that's a little different, Joanne, because a lot of our patients, when they go on peritoneal dialysis, they use the cycler, and they pretty much
Mhm.
think that that's the only way that it can be done. So you said that you do the manual exchanges instead of using the cycler. So could you talk a little bit about the difference between the manual and the cycler, and maybe why you choose to do it manually?
Certainly. I did the cycler for about a year when I first got off of the hemodialysis. The placement of my access in my tummy is, I guess, a little high. And anyway, I alarmed a lot throughout the night. And so I would have to get up every, how many hours it was set for, I don't even remember anymore. But every so many hours, I would have to get up and wiggle around and pace a little. And after a year, I just wasn't getting enough sleep. So I tried the manual, and I just am very, very happy there. I was
Mhm.
recently in the hospital overnight and had to go back on the cycler for that 24 hours, and it alarmed the first drain,
Sure.
and they had a lot of trouble getting it started back up again. And
Mhm.
so the whole night, I pretty much had to just lay there in place, and it didn't go off again, but I couldn't move or wiggle for fear it would.
Right.
So
That's
I just,
really encouraging, though, that if one way doesn't work for you, you can try something else. So that's something for us all to think about. No
oh, yeah.
no method is perfect, and sometimes we have to make little adjustments so that we can get to that sweet spot.
Hmm.
So thank
And the
you,
more you try,
Joanne.
mhm,
Mm, Go ahead. You can go ahead.
the more you try the different modalities, you will eventually get to one that is really good and efficient for your body. So
Absolutely, I can agree with you there. So, Renita, what about you? What did you find were the differences in your treatment in center and the treatments that you were able to give to yourself at home on PD?
Well, again, the physical difference was that I have a little bit more energy, and like the others have said, so I'll keep mine comments brief. Um, I don't have the roller coaster ride that you go in center, you get your treatment, and you're wiped out. Next day you're wiped out, whatever. I did mine in the evening, so luckily I would go home and go to sleep. But the next day I was kind of wiped out, and then you
Sure.
finally get back together, and it's time to go back again. So that that roller coaster ride went away. Because I do the peritoneal on the cycler at night.
Mhm.
So I'm getting treatment every night. I do one manual exchange during the day. But it's so much easier for me to, I get up and I just go on about my day. So but yeah, that would like the others have said, that just energy level is different.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for that. I have to agree as well. I'm like the Energizer Bunny now. When I was in center, I couldn't do a thing. Like you said, it was a roller coaster ride. You had to do everything on your day off because you knew you were going to feel terrible when you got back from treatment that next day. So I found that doing the home therapies, I was more even, and I was able to do the things that I enjoyed more because I had that energy and I was doing those treatments more often. So thank you all for answering that question. I just have one more for you before we jump into our myths portion of our discussion. What would you consider to be maybe a burden in doing home dialysis? Just really briefly, do you find that doing your treatments at home can pose a burden to you? And I'll ask Joanne first.
Um, I'm going to give a short answer. I don't have any burdens with it. I am just so blessed with my manual peritoneal. I guess if I had to list something, it's the fact that those drain bags accumulate pretty fast if you don't drain them right away when you're done using them. But the system is just so good. Just removes my toxins so well, and
that's great, Joanne. What about you, Renita? Any burdens with on your part?
Well, I will say that, in all honesty, sometimes it does feel a little overwhelming because you're doing it every day. And sometimes I feel like, gosh, can I just get a break? So I did actually try to take a break and go back in center for a few weeks, but they didn't pull enough off of me like the first couple, and I ended up in fluid overload and in the hospital, and so it's like, okay, well, never mind then.
Yeah, I can understand that one too.
Myself. So I guess that would be the truthfully and honestly, if I want to be honest, it is, but I know I have to do it to keep myself alive.
Yeah. Well, I think responsibility is a big piece of it. We are responsible for our own treatment. And yes, it's very empowering to be responsible for your own treatment, but with that does come a little bit of, overwhelmment from one time to another. But with home hemodialysis, and in your case, with peritoneal dialysis, you were able to go back in center for a little while. It wasn't to your satisfaction. And the same for me. Once I started doing my own treatments, I didn't want anybody else to do my treatments for me because it wasn't done right. So I think once we take on that responsibility, I think we're pretty much the masters of our own destinies there.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I had a problem fistula too. So like
yeah.
Joanne was saying, I would, infiltrate, and they had I was a hard stick, and blah blah blah.
Right.
And so
You're better off doing it yourself. So Tom, you're doing home hemodialysis, which I know from my own experience, there's a lot of steps involved. There's a good bit of responsibility involved with doing those treatments yourself. Um, do you sometimes maybe get overwhelmed or stressed with doing your own treatments?
No. How about there?
Okay, we hear you now.
Not necessarily. I mean, the biggest burden we have in home hemodialysis is the equipment.
Okay.
There's different type. There's two ways of doing home hemodialysis. We use a machine called the Pure Flow, which mixes our dialysate, or you could use pre-bagged dialysate, which many patients do. But if there's a problem with the equipment, and there's with the supplies and the equipment, and the quality control sometimes isn't 100%. It never is. I mean, we're all human. But, you know, when you start having problems with the machines, you know, you get alarms that are unfounded. You get, you know, just equipment failure.
Sure.
All of a sudden you're planning to do a treatment and then boom, you know, the machine doesn't work.
Right.
So you have
But
to,
but now, Tom, just to for a second, if you do have a problem with your equipment or you have some type of mechanical failure or something like that, how do you resolve that issue? I mean, is it a big deal if you can't do treatment that night, or how do you resolve that issue?
well, there's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week tech support. You call
Right.
in and they will guide you along,
Right.
help either alleviate and find a solution to your problem, or they'll just swap out your machine, which happens overnight
Right.
with the weather the way it's been, and with COVID and shipping. You know, that might take more than a day. But you know, as we're trained for this.
Yeah.
You know, you're trained for emergencies, you know, and I mean, there's so many resources, you know, the Kidney Community Emergency Response Network is just, you know, these people are, you know, they just keep you in tune to what you do, you know,
Right.
and then your support groups, you know, you have the tech support there, but there's also people out there, you know,
Yeah.
as patients who have, we have groups that we put together. If you have an immediate problem and you don't like what tech's telling you, you know, you could maybe find a solution through another patient.
Yeah.
And,
So
you
you know
know,
what? So I'm sorry to cut you off there,
also,
but you know I think that that's a really good lesson to share with all of our participants, that you're never really alone when you're doing home dialysis. There's always someone to call. There's always tech support. You know, there's always another way. So if you do run into a little problem, there's no need to be afraid. There's always some place for you to go for you to get your issues resolved. So, with that being said, you know, I know as patients, we hear a lot of information. Sometimes we hear too much information. We're overwhelmed with information about different treatment options. We hear things about the transplant experience, and sometimes we hear really great information that helps us to make good decisions for ourselves. And sometimes we hear information that's not so good, that can kind of frighten us from taking that next step and exploring our other options. So we wanted to do a little myth busting today. We have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to go really quickly and ask each one of you uh, a myth question, and we want you to bust that myth so that our participants can get some good factual information. So, Tom, here that says you must buy the dialysis machine to use it at home. Is that a myth or is that the truth?
that's a myth.
All right. Yes, it is absolutely a myth. You do not have to buy your dialysis machine. Your health insurance, if they're paying for your dialysis in center, they'll pay for your treatments at home as well. Renita, I have one for you. Here's the myth. If you do dialysis at home, you won't be able to change dialysis types or be a candidate for transplant. What do you think about that myth?
That's absolutely a myth. Like I've said, I've changed types. Joanne mentioned she's changed types.
Absolutely.
And as Tom mentioned earlier, home dialysis sometimes makes you a better candidate for transplant because you're getting more gentle dialysis on a much more consistent basis. So it keeps your numbers typically in line.
Right.
And then you're typically able to sustain and be a better candidate for transplants. But you know that's a myth.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. All right, everybody, you heard that. That myth is busted wide open. So you can change dialysis types. If you try something and it's not for you, you can always go back in center or you can try another home therapy, and you absolutely can be a candidate for a kidney transplant. Okay, so I have a one for you, Joanne. How about there's only one way to do peritoneal dialysis? I know we addressed this earlier, but go ahead and bust that myth for us.
Totally a myth. You can use the cycler during the night and be all day, or you can do the manual in with 15 minutes 4 times a day. You're also free during the day.
Thanks so much, Joanne. And I remember when I was on PD, I would go back and forth between the two. It all depended on what I was doing that day. Sometimes I would do the manual exchanges if I didn't want to be hooked up to the machine at night. Maybe I had a hot date and I wanted to be free at night. So I would do my manuals during the day. So
or to travel, Dawn.
exactly.
Traveling too.
Traveling is something else. It's so easy to do when you're doing your home therapies. I've traveled with both of my home dialysis machines, and it's just wonderful to be able to pick up and just be organized and make your arrangements and just take your machine and go. It's a wonderful thing. Uh, okay, we have time, I think, maybe for one more question, and we'll direct this to Tom. And Tom, I know you talked to us about self-cannulation, which you really gave us some great information about your nurse and how skilled your nurse was at training you to put your own needles in. And there's a myth here that says that you can bleed to death during home hemodialysis. Let's bust that myth wide open for us.
Well, you could bleed to death if you left something unhooked on your machine, but you would know about it very quickly. But no, it's really, there is typically a human body is 8 liters of fluid with your blood. So, and you could lose up to 6 liters of that and still be conscious, actually, or not. It depends on who you are. But,
okay, but Tom, what about the alarms on the machine?
Yes.
If you left something open, wouldn't you?
Yes, it would get an alarm and the machine would shut off, and you would.
Okay.
Yeah, it shuts off automatically if something's open. If there's alarms that if there's any air introduced into the system,
there you go.
You could get an alarm right away, because you don't want to get hemolysis, which is air in your bloodstream.
Exactly.
And there is, when you do cannulate, there is little tiny bubbles of air that do go. You do introduce them into your bloodstream, but it's insignificant.
It's not enough to.
Problem, right? It's not like you can give yourself an aneurysm by filling a syringe full of air and
right.
Injecting it into your heart. Now that'll do it. Right. But for the most part, there's so many fail safes that it's just about near impossible to bleed to death.
Okay. So we have 1 minute left. I just want to go right down the line and ask everyone, what's maybe one word or 2 words that you would say to a patient to motivate them to consider dialyzing at home? And let's start with Joanne.
Word would be hope. Don't ever give up hope. Home dialysis just changes your life that much.
That's a great one. Renita, what about you?
I would I would have to say it's more than one word though, but it's less restriction. So
Oh,
if
2
you
words is
want
good.
less, yeah, if you want less fluid restriction, less food restriction, less travel restriction, home dialysis is for you.
Okay, that was great. What about you, Tom?
Well, you could your appetite. You could eat more. Doesn't expand your diet. Travel. One word: travel. You can travel, and you don't have to make arrangements with another clinic. You just load all your stuff up in the back of your car and go stay with one of your children or a friend, or just you can go camping.
Yeah.
Just as long as you have the electricity to run the machine, because that's all you need.
Right.
A plug there, and that's it.
And that's about it.
Yeah, and you can do that with a generator. So actually, is a lot of people who do go camping.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for being so candid and sharing your experiences with us with home dialysis. And we really hope that we've given some information just to make our participants, think about home dialysis, and maybe it would be an option or a choice or something for them to find out a little bit more about. And so at this time, we're going to do a little bit of question and answers. And
Yes.
should I turn it over to Kim?
Yes. Thank you, Dawn. And
All
thank
right.
you to our entire panel. This has been an incredible discussion. Just like Dawn said, I thank you for sharing your experiences. And Matt, if I could have the first slide after all the panel photos, there we go. We did receive a lot of questions, and before we get to those, I just want to go over a couple things really quick. Dawn took some myths out of this book that we're showing on the screen right now. This was originated from the NCC, and it is called Uncovering Myths About Home Dialysis, Myths versus Reality. And this resource was developed by patients for patients through the NPFE-LAN. And not only does it list the myths and realities, but it also provides tips if you're making a decision about if this is the treatment option for you. So you can take a look at this at the website there on the screen, and then select home dialysis. So we want to make sure that you had that resource available to you. If I can have the next slide, please. So earlier, Jerome also talked about the Kidneyhub.org, which is a mobile-friendly tool which provides a lot of our resources very easy on your cell phone or your mobile device. We also have a whole section in there about home dialysis. So we wanted to make sure that we brought it up to you again during this call, and wanted to remind you to just go ahead and visit it. So visit the kidneyhub.org on your mobile device. You can also use your tablet to gain access to a wealth of resources. So hopefully you've had a chance to submit some of your questions. We can go ahead and have the next slide there if you like, Matt. We did receive some. There's still some time if you want to submit more. We know we're going to go until about 1:45. That'll be 1 hour for this session. So the first question that we received was, when I bring up home modality, some of my patients stated that they want to separate their home environment from dialysis. They said they don't want their home to look like a medical office. I was wondering how you would respond to this.
For me, I would have to say that initially I was a little bit concerned about, having the boxes in my house or having my machine right in my bedroom. But you know what? I feel so much better, and my quality of life has improved in such a great way in my overall health, until I love every one of those boxes. With home hemodialysis, I get about 13 boxes a month, and my machine is right next to my bed. So it's really not as challenging as it is for, for PD patients. But I think that my life and how I feel is much more important than, whether there are boxes lined up down my hallway or not.
I have to agree, Dawn. I have quite a few more boxes than 13. But I think once, uh, and my machine, of course, is beside my bed, and then I have an IV pole for my manuals. Um, I, I mean, I guess I don't really even consist, just kind of part of the furniture now, and so it doesn't really affect or look like it's not like it looks like an office, but so I mean, as long as you have plans for the trash is one thing that you have to have plans for the boxes, the empty boxes, and we break those down. My husband and I break those down, and we take it to a recycle bin around the corner at a school, and so we've come up with things that don't overwhelm the house, looking like because the boxes are in one bedroom shut off, so we don't really even see them until I go in there. But that's just me.
Very good. Thank you both for sharing that. And Bernita, now that you answered that, I think this one was directed toward you. What kind of dialysis did your dad do? I'm sorry if I missed what you said. Were there a lot of differences between your and his experiences?
Sometimes he did. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
My father did in-center. He didn't. We lived in different states. He was in Ohio and I was here, so I didn't get to. I wasn't there for a lot of the pre-planning, so I don't know if his doctor at the time talked about the different home dialysis. To be quite frank with you, I don't think he would have been compliant enough to do home dialysis. But he actually did in-center. And his experience, I think because he was retired, he's older, so when he actually started, so he had a different kind of outlook on things, and he kind of worried about the negative piece in it. And so his experience was a little bit different. So since I knew what to expect, I tried to be more positive about it and how it could really work and benefit me, particularly for home dialysis. But he was, of course, unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to see me to go on home dialysis, so know that there was other options. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Joanne or Renita, this one, if one of you would be interested or both of you interested in answering this. I did PD and I used the cycler For me, the draining was very painful. PD made my stomach very bloated. Also, I developed 3 hernias while on PD. Doing it manually, is there any pain when draining? I'm currently doing home hemo and it is much better for me and my body.
I have no pain
So
when I drain. I would just say, again, if the work, then I would probably stay with that. But I don't know if pain, or they would have pain.
Yeah, I don't. I do have a little drain pain sometimes, but it really doesn't. It really is not that bad. It's usually if it gets really dry, like the peritoneum gets really dry and it kind of sucks in there and it kind of a little painful. But with the manual, no, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just jump in on that one too. If you're having drain pain, that's something that you really need to bring up with your nurse, because if you're using the cycler, they can change you to a tidal kind of flow so that you're not emptying out your peritoneum. I used to experience that as well. And usually you get that pain when you're completely dry, like Renita said. So that's something I would definitely talk to the care team about.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dawn. I forgot about that because I am on a tidal, so it only drains me down to about 200 during the night, so I don't wake up with that pain.
Right.
Very good. Thank you. Next question. Please explain what is needed at one's home. In a separate room, it is a separate room needed. Question. Have a friend that caught an infection at home and now he is at the center. If one does 12 hours per week at a center, how many hours at home for the week? So it looks like they're asking.
Well, I do 16 hours.
I
do 8 hours a night.
Yeah, I do about 26 hours a week. I'm about 6.5 hours every other day, and I'm on home hemodialysis.
And it also looks like they're.
Sorry,
Joanne. No, go ahead.
The thing
Joanne.
I like about the home manual PD, basically, I'm dialyzing 24/7. Actual time doing the exchange about 24 times a week. And like I said, they take 15 minutes each is all.
Yeah, but it's an individual thing. Everybody's going to have a different prescription. It's not like the dialysis center. Everybody doesn't do 3.5 hours. You know, it all depends on you know, your blood work and what your doctor prescribes for you.
Very good. Okay. And then, has COVID had an impact on how you go about your treatment? Has anyone been impacted by how COVID made you go about your treatment?
I would say, I mean, infection mitigation is always top of mind when you're doing your treatment. I mean, that's every day. You do what you do the things that you're supposed to do to keep from getting infection. So that being said, with COVID, I mean, we're extra vigilant. I have been extra vigilant. My husband has been tried to be extra vigilant with, making sure that things are clean when they come in the house and I spray down my boxes when they do the delivery and just extra things that keep, try to keep us safe.
Kim, fortunately for me, my life has changed as a result of COVID, on externally. But the great thing about being a home patient is that the home doesn't change. My deliveries came, my supplies were already here. I had everything that I needed, and I didn't have to go out to get my treatments. So, I was so fortunate to be a home patient because that was a source of security for me. I knew that I was going to be able to get my treatment.
Very good. Thank you for that. Now, we received more questions than it looks like we are going to have time to answer. So would you be open to, if we sent you the questions, to maybe providing short answers back so that we can make these available after the session?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
So we, again, would like to thank everyone for attending this session. We know that we're running just a little bit behind with the other sessions, but the next session will begin at 2 p.m. So we will take about a 15-minute break, and we look forward to having you join us at 2 p.m. So thank you everyone for your time. We'll see you shortly.